course.
Voila.
We are live. So live.
That is so unconvincing. Cheers, everybody.
Chris and I would rather be back up in upstate New York.
That's beside the point. Obviously, as you can tell,
We're back home.
We are back home. If you tuned in last week, we did Haunted England Volume 2, and we were up
in upstate New York.
Up at our retreat in New York. So we are back now, and we have another episode for you. We're doing back-to-back because, well...
our schedule got a little flippy-floppy.
Yes.
So it's going to be a break after this one.
We are taking a break? Or are we doing back-to-back-to-back?
No,
we decided not to do that?
We changed something.
We changed something.
Yeah.
But in any case, well...
Yeah, we're going to take 2 weeks off after this one. We'll be back on the 23rd.
23rd. Okay. All right. So, schedule
got messed up.
Schedule is what schedule is. But glad that you're here tonight. Thank you for tuning in. And we are here to talk about the haunts of the legend and lore of Iceland, which of course does include...
It's not just haunts.
It's not just ghosts.
Because of their belief system.
Which is pretty awesome, and we're going to get into that.
They believe in a lot of legends and lore and very fervently believe in it.
Yes.
So we could not talk about hauntings without talking about the lore and the legends as well.
Yeah. So
when the president just comes right out and says it.
Yeah. But before we get into that, just a couple of real quick things. Not this coming Friday, but the Friday afterwards. Friday the 13th. So if you want to come on out and join us on a tour, and we hope that you do, we actually have a special event tour that night. We're going to be at the John Marshall House, doing our Ghosts of the John Marshall House and the Spirits of Court End tour.
Yes, and we're getting back more and more data from the night that Chris and I were there with CPRI investigating, and so hopefully CPRI will be talking about some of the new things that they caught.
Yep. You don't have the same script as I do. We'll share for now. I was going to say, there's something off with there.
I touched the haunted.
It's okay. It's fine. But anyways, so yeah, we got that coming up. But of course, we're not just Friday the 13th. We have all kinds of tours available basically every day of the week. So if you want to come on out anytime, and we hope that you do, you can come on out and get spooky with us. So we actually had a sold out tour on Saturday night. So had a really good weekend and a really good start to the summer season. So come on out, get spooky with us. Got lots of stuff going on. But anyway, so what we are here again. We got Haunted Iceland tonight, and real quick before we... That's the one. Yep. So, and Patrick, good evening. Yes.
Hi, everybody.
So, and I'm glad that you're excited for tonight. We're excited for tonight. This was a fun episode. So all kinds of...
I tried not to get lost in the sagas.
Yeah, and we didn't. We didn't get into the sagas too much.
No.
It
was hard doing the research because it really wanted to send me down the saga rabbit hole, and I was trying not to.
Just about any episode that we actually do could wind up being an entire novel in its own right.
Yes.
And we have to make sure that we get something that we can talk about.
Yes.
Something that we won't talk ourselves hoarse over the course of multiple hours.
But Chris and I also wanted to do a preview because we actually are going to be going on a Legends and Lore and Ghost tour
in Reykjavik
in September.
Yep, so we're looking forward to that.
So I wanted to do a little pre-research and see what I could come up with.
Yep, and we got Beverly on tonight. Hi, Beverly. Glad you could tune in as well. So, got Patrick, got Beverly, and if anybody else wants to drop into the comments and say hi, we always appreciate it. And as we go through the show, always questions, comments, more than welcome. We'd love to hear from you. But here we go. We got the Legends and Lore of Iceland for you. So Iceland is a country renowned for its stunning landscapes and rich historical heritage. Irish monks first settled in Iceland during the 8th century, and in the 860s, not 1860s, the 860s, Norsemen happened to cross Iceland. The first Viking to attempt settlement in Iceland was a Norwegian named Floki Vilgurason.
Not Loki. Floki.
Floki. Yes. However, his livestock perished due to the severe cold, prompting his return to Norway, where he named the new land Iceland. A noble Norseman, Ingolfur Arnaldsson, settled in Reykjavik in 871 and bestowed the city with its name. Iceland saw significant settlement during the 9th and 10th centuries by Norsemen from Scandinavia and Celts from the British Isles, who eventually displaced the Irish monks. By 930, Iceland's population had grown to approximately 60,000 inhabitants. Currently, Iceland has a population of around 320,000. So considering we got more than a millennia of history, it hasn't exactly exploded in population.
I mean, their winters there were kind of fun.
Yeah, but anyways, so the country is celebrated for its geothermal hot springs, glaciers, and volcanoes that occasionally affect air travel. Fun stuff there.
And spas.
Yep, nonetheless, there is much more to Iceland beyond its picturesque scenery. So, you want to talk about them? Of course you do.
Because I want to be one.
So go ahead.
All right, so we're going to talk about elves. Because, yeah, elves. They are a living, breathing thing, according to the Iceland people, and they are out there every single day. When discussing the supernatural elements in Iceland, it's essential to begin with the folklore surrounding the elves. These entities hold significant cultural importance in Iceland. They're comparable to the fairy folk in Europe, and superstition is an intrinsic part of Iceland's heritage and remains very prevalent today. The inhabitants of Iceland believe their land is shared with elves, trolls, and a group of small beings resembling dwarves. Yes, we have gone to Rivendell and Mordor and a few other places with this. The origin of the elf lore traces back to the beginning of time, starting with the biblical figures of Adam and Eve. According to legend, Adam and Eve had several children, and one day God visited them and requested to see their offspring. As omniscient and omnipresent as God was aware that not all the children were presented to him. Eve had hidden the unclean children because she had not had the opportunity to wash them. God was displeased with this act of concealment and declared, "What man hides from God, God will hide from man." Thus, the unwashed children became invisible, creating the world of the elves. As successive generations of humanity continued to inhabit the earth, so did the generations of the elf kind. Today, elves are considered to be either friendly or hostile, and are thought to have influence over the sun and weather. Encountering an elf can bring misfortune if not done carefully. In Iceland, there are some stones identified as elf stones, which resemble large boulders and are considered the entrances to an elf's dwelling. Elves are said to prefer rugged, distinctive rock formations. Due to these superstitions, the Icelandic population constructs homes and roads around these elf stones, ensuring they will remain untouched. Disturbing such a stone is believed to result in calamity. To ascertain whether a boulder is an elf stone, one might attempt to move it with machinery. If the boulder remains immovable or unbreakable, it's an elf stone. Stop touching it. Here is the story as an example of how this superstition continues today. A New York Times article reported a port on the outskirts of Reykjavik prides itself on its unusually high elf population. Tourists are invited to tour what is known as the elf locations, including a large rock whose reputation as an elf habitat meant that a nearby road was diverted some years ago as to not disturb the unseen residents. That is right. They moved a road because of an elf stone.
As you do.
As you should.
As you should.
Richmond's got some stuff to learn here. All right, Ellie Erlson.
Erling's daughter.
Early Sarler, thank you. The head of town council's planning committee said that it made sense to her, sharing her philosophy. You don't have to see everything you believe in, because many of your greatest experiences happened with closed eyes. As you might imagine, Iceland's director of roads had a fairly challenging job. It can be hard enough to manage roads in a climate like Iceland's, but the previous director,
Bjorn Jonassen,
called the climate and the elves alike being part of the job. When his department wanted to build a road near the northern end of Akureyri, a biologist objected, saying it would cut through an elf community, and drew up a map complete with the elves' harbor and town center to prove it. The biologist's objections were overridden, but Johnson held on to the map, and that was published in a magazine. He recalled of the map, it's the only documented case of an invisible city plan. His chief engineer,
Jan Birger Jonsson,
had much more difficult case to solve. When the road builders tried to cut through the pass of the Giants and another northern fjord, local people started having nightmares, and protests poured in. As soon as the bulldozers were turned towards a particular rock, they broke down. Eventually, the road department was forced to investigate the problem, going too far as to consult with a medium. Johnson recalled that the medium found out that a lady had cursed the place, so we had to get her permission. The trouble was that the lady had died so long ago she was no longer in the next heaven, but in the one beyond. Therefore, they had to contact the medium in the next heaven, who could then get in touch with her. We're playing a game of telephone through the spiritual realm now. Out of curiosity, he sat in on some of the sessions and together with a foreman and another engineer. The lady never appeared, but her permission was obtained after the road department agreed to build over the rock rather than blast the top off, as it was originally planned. As bizarre as this may seem in some of the global road building community, it's everyday practice in Iceland. While Johnson is a skeptic himself, he does believe that it's an important part of the culture that everyone keeps these ideas alive. Almost every farm has some curse. Almost every Icelandic field, there is a patch where it is forbidden to cut any hay. Then the farmers spot our surveyors. They tell us where the untouchable parts are. And we just build the road elsewhere. Our country is open so that it really does not matter.
Yeah. One of the perks of having a relatively small population and so much landscape to work with.
You don't go there? Okay, fine. What about over here?
Yep. And Patrick partially agrees with you as far as who would not want to be an elf unless you could be a werewolf. It's fair.
I want the height. And I want the hair that is absolutely gorgeous and I don't have to think about it.
Are we going to get into a debate of whether an elf or a werewolf is taller?
No.
No.
Because the werewolf is always tall when he turns into Wolfthorn.
Okay.
But consistently,
an elf is taller all around the clock.
Yes.
Gotcha.
With perfect hair. And really cool knives and bows.
Okay.
I'll be friends with the werewolf. We'll go hiking together.
Sorry, my brain went someplace else.
Did I just break you?
My brain went someplace else entirely. So
I just broke Chris.
And Patrick says that the werewolves have gray hair too. So. Okay, unbreaking. Reboot. This was not a debate I was prepared to have on the air. So, yes, elves, Iceland. Be careful. Don't tread on them. Give them their space.
Offering. Always
give them their space. And there's plenty of space, so there's no reason to not give them their space. So, and you do you, Beth. Cool. I would enjoy going hiking together. That would be fun. I'll go for a hike. I don't know what I'm going to be, but I'll go for a hike.
Just not a cave troll.
So, anyways, aside from the elves, there's plenty of haunting lore to be found across Iceland as well, with many tales deeply rooted in Celtic and Nordic lore. Ghosts are broken up into several categories here.
Mm-hmm.
So there are the mountainside ghosts that live in shacks and caves in the hills. They are often seen by shepherds. Two of these ghosts are named Ergil and Sikador. Ergil was killed when he fell off a mountain, and Sikador died when he was crushed by a rock. The farmer, Thomas from Bratholt, had a run-in with a mountainside ghost at a mountain shack in Lamsfelvir, and spent an evening having to defend himself with a pocket knife. And this is only going to get more fun as the evening goes on. Fair warning, if you enjoyed watching our Welsh episode and tripping over that, you're in for another treat.
And we're drinking high octane tonight.
Yeah.
So this is going to get fun.
Yeah. So, yes. Me and the Icelandic tongue are going to have a bit of an adventure this evening.
I'm going to let him say all those words.
You've already started letting me say all those words. Anyways, then there are the Mori, which are the male ghosts that wear clothing like the poor people of old in Iceland, and female ghosts are called the Skota. The Skota are reputed to wear brown dresses, backward headdresses, and red socks. Not sure what the deal is with the red socks, but red socks.
Whatever.
Anyways, then there are the stable ghosts that are the spirits of farmers who have passed away and continue to hang out in stables. Makes sense. One such ghost would attack men from behind, and so people walk backward out of stables to ensure no such attack. So if you ever find yourself in a stable in Iceland, remember to back out the door. Then there are, of course, the sagas that relate the tales of ghosts from ancient times as well. We're just going to kind of leave it at that because that's a whole nother rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Then there are, we'll probably have we could do a whole episode on the sagas sometime.
Probably.
Anyways, then there are the stories about nude ghosts. Yes, naked ghosts. And sir, you just...
So these are ghosts that seem to be premonitions of approaching death.
Okay.
There we go.
And several stories through the years tell of people who have seen familiar face sitting or walking somewhere naked, and then the naked person just disappears. Several days later, the person who appeared to be a nude ghost will die. A man by the name of Valdi, who was from Heller, saw the crew of a ship from Stokksnes naked on the street. These men would later drown in a shipwreck the following winter. Then these men would become sea ghosts, which appear to people as wet and sad ghosts. So, yeah, we have naked ghosts, sea ghosts, sagas, the stable ghosts, and then we still have, then there is a superstition in Iceland that explains ghosts of infants that are seen, but more often heard. If an infant is not baptized before they die, they are doomed to haunt as a ghost. Their cries are sometimes thought to be warnings of bad weather coming. Ghost animals are explained as being human ghosts that have disguised themselves in animal form. The lore of ghosts in Iceland claims that a ghost can take on any form that it wants.
So, Patrick, if you want to be a werewolf ghost, you need to go to Iceland.
Yep.
Just saying.
Now, with such open minds and a diverse number of ways for hauntings to develop, some truly fascinating tales have come about over the years. One that jumped out at us was about a talking skeleton, and it goes like this. In the 18th century, a complete skeleton of a woman was found in a grave, but the unusual thing about the skeleton was that it was totally intact. She was later placed underneath a bench in the church, but then some schoolboys challenged a maidservant to go to the church and fetch the skeleton, which she did. On her way through the church basement, the skeleton began talking to her and told her a story about how she had died during a dispute with the bishop's wife and therefore would not rot completely in her grave. She asked to be buried in the grave with the bishop's lady, and after some discussion between the two of them, the dispute was settled, and in that same instant, the skeleton turned to dust. While that story plays on the tried and true trope of unfinished business, it's unique to hear it told that a skeleton could settle its business itself and immediately find relief and eternal rest. So, I thought that was kind of interesting.
That was a fun one.
Yeah. You gotta do the Mori?
Yes.
Okay.
So this next tale speaks to the lasting belief in the paranormal in Iceland. It's an interesting generational haunting that is part of national lore. Students at a teacher's training college were asked whether the decline of Icelandic ghosts was due to either the Age of Enlightenment, the electrification of the island, or the age of the ghosts themselves. However, one student wasn't having it, responding with, "The question is based on false premise. The ghosts are very much alive." Thor Vigfússon, Thor, a headmaster in Selfoss, did address a concern about the demise of ghosts in Iceland, citing generational nature of some hauntings. One of the peculiarities of many Icelandic ghosts is that they tend to haunt families. That's right. They haunt your generational families. And if you move, they follow. Just letting you know that one. Lore states that they usually stay with the families for 9 generations. A fact that has brought some distress to Thor. The source of Thor's concern is Mori, the brown one. Thor was brought up on a farm haunted by Mori. He is the 9th generation of his family to be accompanied by the spirit. Mori first appeared to Thor's ancestors back in 1784, making them a fairly aged spirit. While there is little that Thor can do about his family being in the family's 9th generation, or about the Icelandic lore that implies that Mori will die out when Thor's time comes, one thing that Thor can do is share Mori's tale, so at least he can remain around that way. The story starts with Rusty. According to the legend, Rusty was 16 years old in the late 1700s in Iceland, and one day he is out walking during a bad storm. Unfortunately, Rusty only had rags on, and it was hard for him to find shelter. At one point, he finally finds a farm, knocks on the door, and asks the farmer if he could stay there until the storm had passed. To Rusty's surprise, the farmer turned him away. Rusty decided to continue walking in the storm, and sadly, he ended up losing his way and drowning in a very large body of water. After he died, his ghost made the choice to come back and haunt the farmer that denied him shelter on that fatal night. However, he didn't just haunt the farmer. He haunted the family of the farmer for generations. So if anything went wrong, it was blamed on Rusty, a.k.a. Mori, the brown one. Some examples include marriages not working out, farm equipment breaking, things going missing, and so on. Apparently, Rusty's ghost was not satisfied with just haunting the family, because it said he started to haunt travelers as well. Any car that would refuse to give a hitchhiker a lift outside of Rusty's gate was said to break down within 500 yards. Over time, it's believed that Rusty acquired some companions. A young woman that died in a similar way to Rusty ended up joining Rusty as a ghost to haunt travelers. Unfortunately, it's believed that the ghosts of Rusty and the young woman are somehow caused the death of another person. The individual also became a ghost and joined the ghost gang to haunt people. So if you plan on traveling along Iceland's south coast, just know there's a chance that you might be haunted by this trio of ghosts. Any other questions or comments?
Just nothing. Blah, blah, blah. I am broken this evening. I apologize.
Patrick, we're broken.
But yeah, the whole multi-generational haunting thing is really kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so much so...
Well, when you think about the dolls that people have kept through their family's generations...
Yeah.
Similar, different culture, but similar idea. Yeah,
it is. And what is also really interesting is that also that some of these multi-generational ones that they, the families, they get concerned for these spirits once they get to be like the 9th generation. Like what's going to happen to the spirit afterward? Because you are a family member at that point. Yeah, it's like, well, once my generation dies out, what happens to the spirit that's been haunting the family for 9 generations? Did they finally go on to the next level? Yeah, but the next gate. But they do kind of basically become part of the family at that point, and so you get a little concerned about them. What's going to happen to them in the afterlife? But Patrick's apologizing. It's okay. Break you. It's okay. It's easily done these days. Yeah. Especially after a 10.5-hour drive home yesterday. 10 hours. 10 hours. 10 hours. Yeah, we were routed way around D.C., so I don't even know what was going on in D.C. Yeah, which is just as well. I prefer not to know what's going on in D.C. With that, we're going to talk about Iceland's presidential story, though. So ghostly lore in Iceland isn't limited to storytellers and historians. Vigdis Finnbogadóttir, the president of Iceland between 1980 and 1996, would tell visitors about the chats that she would have with a ghost haunting her official residence, Bessastaðir, not far from Reykjavik. Bessastaðir, in addition to being the presidential residence, is an important Icelandic historic site dating back to the Age of Settlement, which ended in 930 AD. The ghost said to haunt the residence is called Apollina Schwarzkopf. Some stories say that she died there of a broken heart. Others suspect a more sinister cause of death. poisoning. Eppelina Schwarzkopf was a powerful and rich Norwegian woman who came to Iceland in 1722 after suing Niels Furman, the governor of Iceland under Denmark, for fraud. The source of the dispute: Eppelina and Niels had been engaged to be married for 14 years when Niels abruptly decided to call off the arrangement. The governor was condemned for trying to renege on the arrangement and was forced to marry Eppelina and accommodate her at Bessastadr. That is, until she died under mysterious circumstances. Many stories state that Eppelina died of a broken heart from an unfulfilling marriage, but it seems unlikely when taking a closer look. Given that she had to sue for the marriage, it should be no surprise that the marriage with Niels at Bessastadr was not a happy one. Most accounts even agree that the pair were not even a good match under any circumstances. Sources say they didn't sleep in the same bed or even dine at the same table together. Eppelina started to think that it was her mother-in-law was planning to poison her, something she confided in a man named Cornelius Wolff. Eppelina Schwarzkopf would die under strange circumstances of an unknown disease after she ate some porridge. She herself claimed to be poisonous on June 20th, 1725. I'm not sure why she ate the porridge if she was convinced it was poison, but well, that's how the story goes. Anyways, a trial would be held to investigate Eppelina's death, and while the claims of poison would be investigated, nothing could be proven, and no one would be punished. Eppelina's ghost at Bessastadr started to gain some attention when the influential people living in the house started speaking about her. President Finnbogadottir said of Eppelina, "I hear her at night, pacing the halls and going from room to room. Sometimes she comes up the stairs and walks in the corridors outside my room, and I say to her, 'Please, Eppelina dear, be very welcome.'" So,
again, the respect.
Yes, have to respect the spirits, if you will.
All right, so now we're going to move into Reykjavik from the president, what?
Oh, no, Patrick's just a couple of comments. And yes, number one, 14 years to be engaged is a very long engagement.
Yeah.
And then if you have to sue to make the marriage work,
it's not going to work.
It'd probably be best to look elsewhere.
I would have sued for money and left.
Yep. And then there was also a question as to when we do plan to come back to the States. And actually, we don't have a next state episode lined up yet. So stay tuned. We will have to
later this summer.
Figure that out. It's going to be a little while before we come back stateside.
Yep. We're doing some preliminary work here.
Yeah.
And you guys are benefiting with lots of Richmond Facebook Live show scripts out. Just saying. So,
but yes, so from the presidential residence on the outskirts of Reykjavik, we'll turn our attention to the heart of Iceland's largest city. Reykjavik is renowned as a cultural hub, but it has some very creepy side as well. With weather-beaten houses, an ancient graveyard, and an industrialized shoreline, there are a variety of environs to let one's imagination run wild with the spirits of bygone eras.
Name.
So starting on the west side of the city, just a short walk from downtown, we'll start with the ancient graveyard, Hallvagadur. Hallvagadur.
With some of the oldest graves in the city, locals can look here to trace back their family histories for generations. The graveyard features unique sculptures, peacefully wooded landscape, lively spiritual energy, and cats.
Because cats.
Yeah, so to start our tale, we just are going to take a little stroll to the cemetery.
Hallvagadur
is located next to the pond, Jorn, in downtown Reykjavik. Between the oldest part of the cemetery and the pond is a street called
Studergata.
The street named Studergata is fairly new. It's had a few different names over the years. Among them are Cemetery Street and Love Street. So much easier to say. Near the end of Studergata meets
Alastradi.
Continuing on to Alastradi and the following road until it turns eastward up to
Vestergata.
You will find yourself in the area of some of Reykjavik's oldest turf houses, once known as
Hildarhus.
Jan.
I have no idea.
Okay.
Jan.
from 1818 to 1885, lived with his wife Jodis and the kids in one of the turf houses on Hildars. He was a wealthy farmer, a captain, and was well regarded across town. He was one of the few who owned a ship and was granted access to fish in all of the Shetlands, Reykjavik's peninsula. Jan and two other distinguished Icelanders, Geir and Christian, were selected to attend a fish show in Bergen, Norway in 1865. Together, they bought a decked ship so they could take fishing in Copenhagen. They named the ship Fanny, and for several years it was the only decked ship in Reykjavik. They were the only ones out shark fishing as well, and they were often able to catch an impressive number of fish compared to other boats. But then tragedy struck. One day, when their ship Fanny was leaving the Faroe Islands, they got caught in a terrible storm which forced their ship south to Scotland. Eventually, the stormy sea broke the ship, and a German ship carrying timber from Norway discovered them and was able to save all the men on board, but nothing else. Jan returned home to a quieter and somewhat more modest life. Now, Jan was never one to flaunt his wealth. He was happiest in his modest home filled with family and friends and other guests. The door was always open day or night if anyone needed a place to stay. It was the norm in Reykjavik for the farms to have a wake in their home. At the end of each wake, Jan would always read scriptures, and he and his daughters would open and close each wake with psalms. Their home atmosphere was loving and welcoming. Jan would often go over to
Miri.
To the south end of the pond to tend to his moss. Miri is now a beautiful park for the people of Reykjavik to enjoy. One evening, Jan left to go to this area, and to get there, he walked south on
Kirkjagestur,
which is now
Sturgata.
After tending his moss, he took the same route home. He hadn't walked far in Sturgata when he met a man whom he knew very well. The man was leaning on the cemetery railing, looking into the cemetery. Jan figured that they could keep each other company on the walk and started towards him. Jan turned his head for a split second, and by the time he looked back to where the man was standing, the man was gone. Unable to see the man anymore, he continued home alone. Shortly after this strange occurrence, the man Jan saw became very sick and passed away. What made the incident even stranger for Jan is that the man was buried in the exact spot in which Jan had seen him staring in at the cemetery.
So, interesting thing about that, thinking back to earlier with the whole premonition ghost type thing,
Yeah.
with them being naked. Apparently this guy wasn't naked.
This one was naked.
I'm assuming he was not naked loitering outside the cemetery, because the guy did not seem to comment on that as part of that story.
Yeah.
In any case, so,
Strange.
we're going to go to the heart of downtown Reykjavik, where we have the Gunnuhver.
Anyway.
Gunnuhver. I don't know. Hopefully that's... Anyways, it's a bustling shopping street that is reportedly haunted by the ghost of a man named Gunnuhver. He is said to wander the street at night, searching for something lost in his lifetime. Shop owners and nighttime revelers have claimed to see his shadowy figure and hear his footsteps echoing through the empty street. Moving along to the Reykjavik City Library, caretakers have reported eerie sensations, cold drafts brushing their necks, and faint scent of old flowers. And then there is an oppressive stillness that feels heavy. Some claim to hear echoing footsteps through the corridors. The most commonly heard tale is that of a spectral librarian roaming the halls in search of something lost in death. Witnesses describe her as a translucid silhouette, accompanied by faint rustles of pages and whispers of disembodied voices. Locals warn about being alone in the library after dark, which can be a bit of a challenge when the country faces its annual period of 24 hours of darkness. I'm sorry, that your gymnastics there was
Quite amusing.
Nobody commented on it yet, but just watching it on the screen here, it was...
He had his tail tangled around the power cable for your computer. That's the reason why I was not going to let it stay there.
Yep. Are you going to read the next story, sir? If you can't see, I have Vincent.
Vincent is right there.
He's right here
right
on my
behind
lap.
the computer.
Yeah, and very inconvenient spot, but he's being so good and so cute.
It's so cozy.
Anyways, yeah. So it is interesting. It's like, ooh, be careful after dark. It's like you live in a country where it's going to be dark for like 24 hours a day for like a month.
And I'm pretty sure they don't close the library for that entire time.
No. So yeah, interesting. If you go to Reykjavik around the winter solstice, be warned. Now, at the east end of the city, you can find a deep look into the history of Iceland at the Arbor Open Air Museum. So what is an open air museum? I'm glad you asked. It's like a living history museum featuring historic structures that have been saved and transported to this place to be preserved for future generations. You can also find representations of Iceland's culture and folklore, and perhaps a relocated spirit or two. One of the houses reportedly still serves as the home of its original owner. If you visit her home, she may appear in the kitchen, a small room with a packed, dirty floor, and a small window near the ceiling, which serves as its only source of light. As authentic a representation of living history that can be found anywhere.
So our next one is the Hura Ghost. And I was really hoping to be able to go to this place when we were going to be in Reykjavik, but found out that it was one of the most popular bars and live music venues in Reykjavik, but unfortunately it is no longer that. Now everybody would often talk about the ghost that's there. Unfortunately, there's nobody talking about the current location. So unfortunately.
But it's been very recently transitioned.
Yeah.
So
the place where Hura was built is actually where the city of Reykjavik's former shoreline was. And the basement of the building, you can still see some of the original shoreline wall. The staff that worked there, when it was the bar and music venue, claimed to have spotted strange shadows on the walls, heard noises after closing time, and felt like they had somebody following them, although they were completely alone in the pub. They also spoke about being hit with a wave of nausea in the back staircase, particularly earlier in the day when the bar was very sparsely filled. Theories have suggested that this is the spirit of a young man who was lost at sea and that he is lonely and sad. Unfortunately, the owners tried to turn it into a sports bar a few years ago, and it never recovered. So today, the building has been turned into a clothing store known as Hura. If the ghost is still haunting the clothing store, it's unknown. It's only been open for a short while, and more time is going to be needed to see if the resident spirit has decided to stick around for the change of scenery. I hope they don't put the changing areas by that back staircase.
Yeah.
Just saying, feeling nauseous while you're trying to close is no bueno.
No. Yeah, is it like you break it, you buy it. If you
barf on it,
you yak on it, you buy it. So yeah, guess time will tell with that. Might still have to take a walk by there and see if we can.
I mean, I don't mind walking by it and perusing, but I don't know if I'll be buying anything. We'll see.
Yeah. So next up in Reykjavik.
This is a very historic landmark that's known as Hofti House. It's at the north shoreline of the city, and it is very well cared for, but presents itself with an imposing, almost ominous air. As you look up at the darkened windows, it's easy to imagine that there is someone standing just beyond, looking back at you from the shadows. And perhaps there is. But it's the ghost of a missed opportunity that seems to loom the largest over this structure. So,
clarity, that was a little bit play on words. Ghost of a missed opportunity.
Historic
opportunity. This first little bit, the history of the place, not the actual ghost story, but very, very much worth mentioning. All this.
Oh yeah, this was fascinating. So on October 11th and 12th of 1986, the Hofti House hosted a summit between Cold War superpowers Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev. Sir? No. Get down carefully.
Come here.
Nico is behind the camera.
Right behind the camera.
Thank you, sir. So that little...
And hence the vibrations and the shifting camera.
Okay. Now, this was literally middle ground between Moscow and Washington. Without talking points, without agendas, Gorbachev and Reagan sat together in the elegant Hofty House, drawn together to enact a massive nuclear weapons reductions. The Reykjavik summit made real the possibility of nuclear weapon abolition, but the two men fell short on this ambitious goal. So, the missed opportunity. The specter of this failed opportunity can be felt throughout the house, but this place is well known for locals for many years before this historic summit. The house was built in 1909 for the French consul Jean-Paul Veron, and since has been in the hands of the powerful and rich people. But none of them have stayed for very long. The earliest occupant to have had ghostly experience was a judge and a poet named Einar Benediktsson.
Shoot. Wait. Oh, Benediktsson.
Benediktsson, I was close. Benediktsson was once a judge on a famous assault case when Solberg
Jonsdottir
heard the verdict as she poisoned herself and died. Einar claimed that the house was haunted by the ghost of Solberg, and at night she would appear to him pleading and crying. This claim was further substantiated by a British ambassador, John Greenway, who resided at the house in 1952 and who demanded that Britain sell the house because of what he called the bumps in the night. He even filed a special permission from Foreign Office to get out of there as quickly as possible. Must have been some very loud bumps in the night.
Yeah. Mr. Greenway, I can just imagine this.
Very staunch, stiff upper lip British guy going, get me out of here now.
Yeah.
Same year, the house was sold back to the Icelandic government, and the official statement by the foreign ministry was, "We do not confirm or deny that Holti has a ghost." Since then, it's remained uninhabited and owned by the state. The town council now gives parties there, but nobody sleeps there. I'll sleep there.
I'd be willing to give it a shot. I don't think they'll let us.
I mean, maybe it was a British thing. Maybe he didn't like Brit.
It's a fascinating place.
Yeah. It's got a beautiful view.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, moving on.
All right, we are going to go ahead and Lisa says hi. Lisa's...
Hi, Lisa.
There. Yeah.
We miss you.
Our old neighbor Lisa, who we don't get to see often enough.
No, we need to make a trip out west to the mountains to go see Lisa.
Yes. But glad you could say hi, Lisa.
And there's the sleepy void.
Yes, there he is.
There's the sleepy void.
Coming out of hiding. Oh, is he coming down to the blanket?
Yep.
He's going to take front and center. All right, so we are going to depart Reykjavik and head to the southwest to a hot spring called Gunnuhver on the Reykjanes Peninsula. Reykjanes Peninsula is the same area where the Blue Lagoon and the International Airport are located. It's an area that most visitors never explore extensively, and yet there are fascinating attractions, places to eat, accommodations, and, of course, this haunted hot spring.
And an active volcano right now, just so you all know.
Gunnuhver is named after a woman named Gunrun. Underdottir.
Okay.
We're going to go with that. And that's the only time we're going to try to pronounce it.
After this, she's going to be known as Gunna.
Yeah, we're going to work around that. So, now, yes. Also went by the name of Gunna. Thank you so much for simplifying that. It is said that she lived in Sandgerði on the Reykjavik Peninsula more than 400 years ago. The place she lived in was owned by a lawyer named Vilhjálmur Jónsson. One day, when Gunna was not able to pay her rent, Vilhjálmur came and took the only thing that she owned, which was a cooking pot. This enraged Gunna, Gunna because that is all that she had to make food, and now it was gone. She decided to go on a starvation protest until her cooking pot was given back to her, but Vilhelma never relented, and she died. The men that carried her coffin to the cemetery noticed at some point that it had become suspiciously light. They would not dare to open it, so they continued on to the gravesite where she would be buried. As they dug her grave, a mysterious voice was heard saying, "No need deep to dig, no plans long to lie." The next day, Vilhjalmur's body was found blue and with broken bones. The spirit of Gunna had haunted him. Of course, this sparked concern in townspeople, so a priest was called in. The priest devised a plan to cast Gunna's spirit into the bubbling hot spring, and it worked. To this day, it is said that when you visit this hot spring, you can see the face of a woman in the billows of steam trying to escape. They do sound, there is a little bit of a Germanic bent to some of these names.
Well, that's partially the Viking.
Yeah, but there is a little bit of overlap between the Germanic languages and the Nordic languages, which do kind of give them some of that same similar bent, if you will.
The back of the throat sounds.
And yes, never mess with an old woman in her cooking pot.
No. There will be broken bones, period.
And what cat can resist a soft blanket? No, we can't resist.
Oh, no, don't touch me.
Yeah.
He's in a no touche pa.
Yep. Because, not going to try that again. Otherwise, we're going to get bitten and or scratched on the air.
Yes.
So.
Sir.
Lulu will put him in his place.
Yes, but I prefer not to have it happen with the camera so close.
This is true. Good point.
Wrecking ball.
Yep. Mr. Nico.
So we're going to talk about sea ghosts now. The Stokksnes Beach. Heading southeast to the southeast parts of Iceland, you can find one of the most beautiful and mysterious beaches there. It is a black sand beach, a Stokksnes Beach, that stretches from the cold and wild ocean water to the dark and snow-covered mountains rising up from the ocean. It's probably one of the most best photographed areas, especially when the northern lights are out.
Oh,
which, by the way, they're out tonight. So if it's clear, y'all should go look after this.
Yes, even here in Virginia, apparently they're going to be visible.
All right, so the area around Stokksnes Beach was the place for the first settlers in Iceland, dating back to the 9th century when the Vikings came from Scandinavia to find a new land. Although today there's nothing more than an abandoned film set for a Viking village left nearby. Although the beach is breathtakingly beautiful, it has also seen its fair share of horrible sights and strange and paranormal rumors. According to local legend, the beach is the place where the most shipwrecks have happened in Iceland, and many dead and drowned have washed ashore here on these beaches. The following is an account by a photographer, Eric Bennett, from 2015, when he and a friend went to the beach for a photography session. Eric and a friend Eric and his friend had been on the beach since the afternoon shooting, and by sundown there was not another soul on the entire beach. A strong wind had been blowing, and it cleared away all the sand, footprints, and erased them that had been left by the visitors that day. After sundown, they went to sleep in their car, hoping to wake up to northern lights in a few hours. When it was about 11 p.m., something woke Eric up, and he saw a spectacular show of the aurora dancing across the sky through the windshield. He quickly jumped out of the car, threw on a jacket, and ran out to the beach with his camera. It was just incredible, and after about 15 minutes or so, Eric went back to the car to wake his friend. The show was fantastic. They were both excited, and they both ran off in different directions, chasing the camps in the dark. Now, Eric shot some photos and then set up his tripod in a new spot in the darkness, not yet knowing what was in front of him. He took a 30-second exposure and waited for it to show up on the screen so he could see his surroundings. The photo came back up on the screen, and what he saw immediately sent chills down his spine. And I think Chris is trying to post the link for this.
I just dropped a link in the comments. There it is. Yep. So what you'll see if you click on this link is absolutely beautiful, dark beach, aurora borealis overhead. And again, keeping in mind that he had not run down this section of beach. His friend has not run down the section of beach.
Nobody else is on this
Nobody
beach.
else had been there. The weather had been such that it wiped all footprints away. And so, beautiful shot down the beach, aurora overhead, and right in front of the camera, there were big, clearly defined, wet footprints leading from as far as he could see all the way up to where his tripod was. And then it stopped there. He turned on his headlamp and looked around and found that there were no footprints or humans in sight. At least no other footprints. That's point of clarity. The footprints were there, but there were no footprints leading away, and there were no people anywhere around. So just these big, heavy, wet footsteps leading right up to in front of his camera, and that was it. He knelt down, looking closely at the massive footprints, and they were definitely fresh. Then Eric's friend approached, and Eric told him that something crazy had just happened, but his friend was unsurprised, because he had had a creepy feeling the entire night since they had gone to bed. Eric showed him the photo of the footprints, and he lost it. He explained that earlier he had not been able to sleep because he felt like someone was standing outside of the car watching them. They stuck together to try and take a few more photos, but then they started hearing voices being carried around the beach by the wind. A dark, heavy feeling started to weigh them down, and so they ran back to the car and drove out of the area as fast as they could. As soon as they got back to the highway, the heavy, ominous feeling lifted off their shoulders, and they immediately felt better. They drove down the road a bit to another spot and continued to shoot the aurora from there.
Now, Eric has done plenty of night shooting alone, and he has never been superstitious or as somebody who gets scared by the dark or ghost stories. But this experience was like nothing else. Coincidentally, Eric was in a hostel in Panama later on in 2016, and an Icelandic filmmaker was also staying in the same dorm room. They began talking about Iceland and places Eric had been. And then Eric told the filmmaker about the speech and asked him if he knew of any other ghost stories. With his face in shock, he explained to Eric that he had literally just finished filming a documentary about this beach and how it was haunted. He says there have been multiple sightings by locals of a giant, hairy man walking out of the ocean at night. Most claim he's a Viking, wet and walking slowly out of the water, though I can't say that I would actually stick around long enough to get a study of the giant's possible heritage.
Yeah. If I see some...
I think Draugr and run.
Yeah. Number one, you generally don't go swimming in the ocean around Iceland. It's bloody cold.
It's cold and dangerous.
Yes. So this guy coming up out of the surf at night... No.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I'm Viking, Englishman, Spaniard, whatever you are. I don't care. I'm not sticking around to get a study of it.
Now, I did find another story from the same beach from people who actually went there trying to investigate any paranormal occurrences. They had no footprint experience. They didn't see the giant hairy man. But while they were taking a food break, they happened to be on a picnic bench near where you drive in and you actually, scan your card to have the gate lift up and go down. Well, they saw that gate lift up and go down twice and no cars were there. So they're like, I don't know if it was a malfunction, but we left pretty close after that.
Yeah. Nice and spooky.
Yeah.
And beautiful. Undoubtedly beautiful.
I would definitely go there and take pictures.
All right. So next up, we have a story that has some roots in folklore. So it goes back quite a ways. And this is about the white cap. And it's an Icelandic ghost story from the old times, although how old is uncertain, as it is now turned into a folktale that has gone through many retellings. It tells the story about a nameless boy and girl that took something from a ghost and had to pay dearly for it. The ghost story was retold from its oral story in Icelandic legends by Jón Arnason, who traveled the country and collected folk tales and ghost stories in the 1800s. He was inspired by the work of the Grimm brothers in Germany. The little boy and girl lived close to a church in a small village in Iceland. The boy was a mischievous boy and had a habit of trying to scare the girl when he had the opportunity. But the more he tried to get a scare out of the girl, the more used to it she got. And in the end, nothing fazed her anymore. And everything she saw, she thought was strange. She was sure it had to be one of the boy's tricks. One day, while they were washing clothes, the girl was sent to the churchyard by her mother. The linen that they had just washed was hung up there to dry. The girl went unafraid into the graveyard and started to fill her basket with the fresh linen when she looked up and saw someone sitting on a tomb close to her. The figure was dressed in all white, and she thought instinctively that it had to be the boy that was up to one of his tricks. So she wasn't afraid and figured she would call his bluff. The girl ran up to the figure on the tomb and pulled off its cap as she said out loud that he would not be able to frighten her this time. She then went home with the linen, but when she came back, the boy was the first one to greet her when she reached the cottage. There was no way he could have reached home before she did, and she started to fear the truth. This was not the only strange thing, though, as when they sorted through the linen, they found the cap that she had pulled off from the figure on the tomb. The white cap, although white, was full of mold and earth. They all then understood that it had been a ghost that she had encountered, and now the whole village was paralyzed with fear. The next day, the ghost was again sitting on the same tombstone as it had done the previous day, although now it was missing its white cap. Nobody dared to approach it and had no idea as to how to rid themselves from it. Ghosts in Icelandic ghost stories were often shown to act as flesh and bone that would interact with living humans, and sometimes they were very dangerous. So they sent for help from a village close to them. In that village, there was an old man that claimed that they had to replace the white cap that the girl had taken to avoid any bad repercussions. It had to be done with everyone watching in complete silence, and it had to be the little girl that gave the cap back. So the whole village gathered in the churchyard, watching as the little girl approached the ghost sitting on the tombstone, not really moving, not really showing any sign of what the ghost really wanted. She placed the white cap on its head and asked if it was satisfied now. The ghost looked up and answered, "Yes, but are you now satisfied?" as it raised its hand and hit her, and the little girl fell over and died. The ghost then sank into the grave he was sitting on and was not seen again.
Don't steal from the ghosts.
Don't mess with the ghosts.
Again, respect.
Yeah. Now, granted, she thought it was the boy.
She did.
But just don't mess around in a graveyard. Just don't. It's kind of rude.
Yeah, well, why was there linen being hung up to dry in the lake?
Fair point.
That to me was rude.
Fair point. But yes.
Maybe why he was out of his grave.
Yes, I could see that.
So, just saying.
Yep.
All right. Deacon Alamerka, meaning the Deacon of the Dark River, is an Icelandic folktale that has been passed down for generations. It's a story that goes, in the story, it is said that a deacon who lived on a farm in Myrka,
in Hergadalur,
was interested in Gunnuhver, a girl who lived on a farm
in Beiska,
located across the river Horga. Right before Christmas, the deacon rode on his horse Faxi to the farm and invited Gunnuhver to a Christmas feast at Myrka. He promised to come back on Christmas Eve so he could bring her to the feast. When he was riding home, a bridge over the river collapsed, which caused him to fall. As a result, he had an awful head injury, which caused him to pass away. In the end, he ended up drowning. Only his horse survived that night. He was found the next morning by a farmer and laid to rest a week before Christmas. However, Gudrun did not get the message, and she waited for her loved one to come back and pick her up. Back home, Gudrun was getting ready for the feast on Christmas Eve, and there had been no word of the deacon's death yet. She heard the knocking on the door, but nobody was there. She thought it was a game he was playing and ran outside with one sleeve of her coat on. She saw the horse Faxi and a man sitting on the horse, assuming it was the deacon. They rode off into the night together, and eventually the deacon's hat tilts up, and underneath his face is a skeleton. The deacon speaks. The moon fades, death rides. Don't you see a white spot on the back of my head? Gudrun, Gudrun. She replied, I see, as is. They did not speak a word to each other until they came to the deacon's farm in Mjölka. When they got off the horse, the deacon spoke again. Wait here, Gudrun, Gudrun. When I move Faxi over the fence. When Gudrun noticed an open grave in the graveyard, she was terrified that the deacon was trying to pull her into it. She was able to break free thanks to having only one sleeve on, and she ran away and pulled the church bells to alert the people of Mjölka. The deacon then plunged back into his open grave with part of her sleeve that had ripped off. After this moment, it is said that the deacon had haunted Gudrun. The haunting did not stop until an exorcist was summoned to put his ghost to rest. The sorcerer trapped the ghost in unholy ground outside the graveyard belonging to the church. He placed a large and cursed stone on it, and it still holds the ghost of the deacon captive to this day. And the stone is very visible. Chris is going to put in the link. This folklore story has been an inspiration to artists, musicians, and more. Also in Icelandic folklore, ghosts often speak in verse, repeating the last word of each line, making a very poetic and spooky story.
Yeah. So that link that I just dropped in the comments there is a link. It'll show you a picture of the stone that was put over the deacon's grave. And with that, that was our last story for this evening. So,
sorry, foot. Ouch.
I will say that wasn't as bad as the Welsh episode as far as the words went. Or maybe I'm just learning to
do it better
or fake till I make it type deal.
Okay.
I don't know. If anybody in Iceland watches this episode,
we apologize in advance.
Sincerely apologize, because I'm 99% sure that even though I may have pronounced some of these words with confidence, I confidently pronounced them incorrectly. So, my apologies for that. But thank you all so much for watching tonight. And again,
we will be back on the 23rd with Haunted Scotland Part 2.
Yes.
And as I said, I am currently researching for a future thing for Chris and I, so you are just benefiting from that research with these Facebook Lives. And once we are done with said research, we will return to the States.
Yeah, so it's going to be probably at least August until we have another stateside story.
Yep.
So, going to be a little while before we return to the States, but we got some other good stuff coming up. Again, Scotland in what'll be 3 weeks.
Yes.
So, and in the meantime, remember, you can come on out Friday the 13th. Told you.
Yep.
Friday the 13th, you can come on out and join us for the John Marshall House Tour. Hope to see you there. And then, well, again, we got tours basically going every night of the week. And trying to think what else we got going on.
We're going to be at some tourism events.
Yeah, but not like public events. Just the tours.
Yep.
So if we do get other things that wind up going on the calendar, we'll keep you posted. Always stay tuned to the social media and stuff like that. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. We got stuff going on. Although most of YouTube is basically just the reposting of these videos. So if you want to go back and watch these videos again later, go catch them on our YouTube channel. And other than that.
And then I am messing with the boy here.
Yes.
I'm keeping those teeth
occupied with something else. Oh my.
We have the murder mitts out.
Oh, he is, you've got him quite animated. And it doesn't look like there's any other lingering questions or, oh wait. Often wonder about folklore involving deacons. In the tradition of the Roman Catholic or Eastern Orthodox churches, deacons must be married before being ordained to the deaconate or remain celibate after ordination. There was one ghost story I read about a deacon saving his wife, and it's significant because if the wife of a deacon dies, the deacon cannot remarry in those traditions. Why a deacon in particular? Not a priest, especially in the story like this, where the deacon's bride to be is the one in danger. It's interesting. I will have to think about that one. That was all Patrick. So, Pat, thank you for sharing that. I was not aware that that was a tradition. So, I learned something new tonight. Thank you. But other than that, oh, and he had heard a similar Irish legend about taking a ghost's cloak. That's referring to the white cap story. So, yes, don't steal from ghosts. Don't steal from dead people in general. Don't steal. Don't steal.
Body statute, not good.
Yeah. Just, don't steal. So, with that,
With that, Chris is now officially thoroughly broken.
I don't know what's wrong with me tonight.
And we will be back another week.
We'll be back. Stay tuned. Come on out. See us on a tour. Patrick, we know where you're coming to see us on the John Marshall House tour.
Yay.
We'll look forward to seeing you there. Hope that a bunch of other people can come on out and join Patrick for that as well. And yeah, with that, I guess we'll go ahead. We will bid you adieu for tonight before I exhibit any more general brokenness on the internet.
And we will go take a quick walk around and see if we see any northern lights, and then I'm going to bed.
That's a good idea. All right. With that, cheers, everybody. Have a good night.
Night.